Episode number 187. Alas! Sighed Bazin. I know it, monsieur, everything is turned topsy-turvy in the world nowadays. While this dialogue was going on, the two young men and the poor lackey descended. Hold my stirrup, Bazin! Cried Aramis, and Aramis sprang into the saddle with his usual grace and agility, but after a few volts and curvets of the noble animal's rider felt his pains come on so insupportably that he turned pale and became unsteady in his seat. D'Artagnan, who, foreseeing such an event, had kept his eye on him, sprang toward him, caught him in his arms, and assisted him to his chamber. "That's all right, my dear Aramis, take care of yourself," said he. "I will go alone in search of Athos." "You are a man of brass," replied Aramis. "No, I have good luck, that is all. But how do you mean to pass your time till I come back? No more tosses, no more glosses upon the fingers or upon benedictions, eh?" Aramis smiled. "I will make verses," said he. "Yes, I dare say, verses perfumed with the odor of the billet from the attendant of Madame de Chevreuse. Teach Bazin prosody, that will console him. As to the horse, ride him a little every day, and that will accustom you to his maneuvers." "Oh, make yourself easy on that head," replied Aramis. "You will find me ready to follow you." They took leave of each other, and in 10 minutes, after having commended his friend to the care of the hostess and Bazin, D'Artagnan was trotting along in the direction of Amiens. How was he going to find Athos? Should he find him at all? The position in which he had left him was critical. He probably had succumbed. This idea, while darkening his brow, drew several sighs from him, and caused him to formulate to himself a few vows of vengeance. Of all his friends, Athos was the eldest, and the least resembling him in appearance, in his tastes and sympathies. Yet he entertained a marked preference for this gentleman. The noble and distinguished air of Athos, those flashes of greatness which from time to time broke out from the shade in which he voluntarily kept himself, that unalterable equality of temper which made him the most pleasant companion in the world, that forced and cynical gaiety, that bravery which might have been termed blind if it had not been the result of the rarest coolness, such qualities attracted more than the esteem, more than the friendship of D'Artagnan. They attracted his admiration. Indeed, when placed beside M. de Tréville, the elegant and noble courtier, Athos in his most cheerful days might advantageously sustain a comparison. He was of middle height, but his person was so admirably shaped, and so well proportioned that more than once in his struggles with Porthos he had overcome the giant, whose physical strength was proverbial among the musketeers. His head, with piercing eyes, a straight nose, a chin cut like that of Brutus, had altogether an indefinable character of grandeur and grace. His hands, of which he took little care, was the despair of Aramis, who cultivated his with almond paste and perfumed oil. The sound of his voice was at once penetrating and melodious, and then, that which was inconceivable in Athos, who was always retiring, was that delicate knowledge of the world, and of the usages of the most brilliant society, those manners of high degree which appeared, as if unconsciously to himself, in his least actions.